I want you to sit with me for a moment and imagine something. Imagine leaving everything you've ever known, not for a vacation, not for an opportunity, but for survival. Imagine walking thousands of miles through desert heat and in the dark of night, holding your baby in your arms, whispering prayers with every step, hoping, just hoping that when you reach the other side, there's going to be a place for you, a chance, a little dignity, maybe even a new beginning. Now imagine that door slams shut right as you reach it. That's the story playing out across America right now under this administration. We are watching a sharp shift, a turn back, a reversal of hope. Illegal aliens, they say, as if those words aren't weighted with lives, with struggle, with humanity. They're not numbers, they're not statistics. They're people. People with names, with children who laugh, who cry, who bleed, who pray. And yet the political language has become colder than ever. There is a force in Washington right now that says if you didn't come here the right way, if you didn't file the papers, if you crossed deserts instead of borders, then you're not just unworthy, you're unwanted. And not only that, you're being sent back. No hearings, no waiting, just deportation, swift and unapologetic. Let's be clear, this isn't about national security anymore. This isn't even about law and order. It's about fear. It's about building walls around the American heart. I've sat with women who were mothers fleeing cartel violence, who said goodbye to brothers and sisters murdered back home. I've held the hands of fathers who work 3 jobs just to send their children to school here, who never once asked for a handout. I've seen the tears of little girls in immigration courtrooms, no taller than the podium, trying to explain why they shouldn't be sent back to countries where their uncles were killed, where their homes were burned to the ground. And now, under this administration, they're being told your journey doesn't matter, your pain doesn't matter, your humanity doesn't matter. This policy of mass deportation may be efficient, but it's not more. We're talking about sending people away from the only homes they've known for the past 10, 15, even 20 years. Families are being torn apart, children are being left in foster care while their parents are taken in the night. I've heard stories, and I believe in stories because stories reveal the soul, and the stories coming out of this political shift. They're not stories of justice, they're not stories of righteousness, they're stories of shame, of silence, of fear in the eyes of brown and black immigrants walking through cities they once felt safe in. Yes, I believe in borders, I believe in laws, but I also believe in compassion, and policy that looks at people as people, not just as paperwork. There's a bigger question here: who gets to belong? Who gets to dream the American dream? Who gets to walk on this land and say, I am home? For centuries, America has opened its arms, sometimes wide, sometimes reluctantly, but it opened. And from that opening came innovation, creativity, resilience. This country is not weakened by immigrants. It has been built by them. Whether they came with papers or with prayers, they all came seeking a life better than the one they left behind. So when we say illegal aliens are getting a ticket out of America, what we're really saying is that America is closing its heart. And if you've ever known what it means to be an outsider, to be told you don't belong, you know how that feels. You know the loneliness, you know the weight of rejection, and you know what it means to hope anyway. That's the voice I want us to listen to. Not the voice of cruelty, not the voice of bureaucracy, but the voice of empathy. Because once upon a time, someone in your family or mine was on the outside too, and someone let them in. Let's not lose that part of ourselves. Let's not forget the spirit of welcome that made America not just a country, but an idea, a promise. Because the truth is, if we start sending people away for how they got here, we might one day send away the very soul of who we are. There was a time in America when the word freedom meant something to the people who crossed mountains and oceans to get here, when the sound of the word echoed in the hearts of mothers carrying babies on their backs, of fathers praying quietly in border towns for one chance to step onto this land. I've sat with those families. I've seen the faith in their eyes, not in politics, but in the possibility that the American dream could still be real. And yet now, as I sit and reflect on the current state of this country, I feel a heaviness. That same hope I once saw, it's now laced with fear, thick, choking, soul-stifling fear. You see, under this administration, something has shifted. It's not just policy. It's not just enforcement, it's the message behind it. The tone, the coldness, the quickness with which we've turned from sanctuary to suspicion. I'm talking about the people, the human beings, who are now being told, with no compassion and no hesitation, you don't belong here, go back. And the way it's being done, it's not quiet, it's not respectful, it's not even careful. It's a storm sweeping through communities, leaving behind silence where there was once laughter and life. I remember a woman I met in El Paso. Her name was Maria. She was in her late 30s, with tired eyes and calloused hands. She had crossed into the United States with her 2 children after her husband was killed in a gang shooting back home in Honduras. She didn't come looking for riches, she came for peace, for survival. She worked in a laundry facility. She paid her tax. She sent her kids to school every morning with little lunch bags and big dreams. And then one night she was taken. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. The children woke up to an empty apartment. Their mother was gone, just like that. That's not just immigration enforcement. That's trauma. That's a wound we are leaving on the hearts of innocent children. That is what this administration is doing swiftly, repeatedly, without remorse. And it's happening in towns big and small. It's happening in cities where undocumented immigrants have lived for decades, built homes, started families, volunteered in their churches, helped neighbors during hurricanes and fires, only to be cast out with the stroke of a bureaucratic pen. This isn't just about legality. This is about morality, about what kind of country we want to be. Because let me tell you something, when people are afraid to go to the hospital because they think ICE will be waiting there, we are no longer protecting America. We are betraying. When children are told not to speak Spanish at school because it might draw attention to their status, we are not upholding values. We are creating shame. When fathers are arrested in parking lots after dropping their daughters off at daycare, we're not strengthening families, we're destroying them. And what's so tragic is that so many of these people still love this country, even as it pushes them out, even as it tells them you're not wanted. That's the resilience of the human spirit. But resilience shouldn't be the price of survival. Dignity should be non-negotiable. Yet today, across America, I see dignity being stripped away at alarming speed. I see the light in people's eyes, dimming under the weight of constant uncertainty. That's what fear does. It suffocates, it paralyzes, and this administration has turned fear into policy. Now I know some people will say, but they broke the law, and I understand that laws matter, borders matter, but so do people, so does mercy, so does the truth that not all laws are just, and not all circumstances are black and white. We need to ask ourselves, when did we become a nation so obsessed with punishment that we forgot about compassion? This country has always stood as a beacon for those fleeing darkness. That's who we said we were, but today that beacon is flickering, and under this administration, the message isn't bring us you're tired, you're poor, you're huddled mass. The message is if you came here the wrong way, we don't care about your story, we don't care about your pain, we don't care about your children, and that is not only heartbreaking, it is dangerous. Because fear breeds more fear. And when you create a system where entire communities live in hiding, where mothers avoid taking their children to school, where workers are too scared to report abuse because they might be deported, you don't create a stronger country, you create a scared one, a silent one, a broken one. So today, I speak not as a politician but as a human being, as someone who still believes in the power of love, in the strength of empathy, in the importance of holding each other up, even when we don't speak the same language or come from the same place, because that is the America I believe in, the America I dream of, one where no child has to cry themselves to sleep wondering if they'll ever see their mama again. Words shape the world. I've always believed that. They carry weight, they carry memory, they carry the power to lift someone up or tear them down, and yet somehow in today's political climate, we've begun using words like illegal and alien as if they don't carry stories, as if they don't define people's lives, as if they aren't heavy with consequence, but they always have been. Let's take a moment to look at those words. Illegal alien. The first time I heard that phrase as a child, I thought it meant someone from another planet, because what else could an alien be? The word feels strange and distant. Like something foreign we're supposed to fear, and that's exactly the point. This language has been designed, whether intentionally or not, to dehumanize, to separate, to make it easier to turn away, to silence empathy, to look at someone not as a mother or a father or a worker or a friend but as a threat. And illegal, oh how that word cuts deep. To call someone illegal is not just to point out a lack of documentation, it is to say your very presence is wrong. You are wrong, and let me tell you that is a powerful thing to say to a person, especially someone who has risked everything just for a chance to breathe, to live, to give their children a better life. I once sat across from a young man named Luis, just 19 years old, who came here as a child. His parents crossed into the US when he was barely 2. He didn't choose the journey. He didn't know what borders meant at that age. He grew up going to school here, playing baseball, singing in the choir, reciting the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, like every other American kid. And yet now, under this administration, he's being told, "You're illegal, you don't belong." It shook him to his core. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and asked, "How can I be illegal for being alive?" That's the question we all need to ask, because once we begin to label people based on a moment of desperation, we begin to lose our humanity. We begin to treat laws as more sacred than life, and we know where that path leads. History has taught us that again and again. Language is not neutral, it builds culture, and right now we're building a culture of fear, of division, of us versus them. When leaders speak about illegal aliens flooding into our country, they don't show you the mother working 2 jobs to feed her kids. They don't show you the teenager winning scholarships and volunteering on weekends. They don't show you the father fixing roofs in the blistering heat to support his family. No, they reduce everyone to a faceless threat, a problem to be solved, a line in a speech, and we're all complicit when we let that language go unchallenged. You see, it's so much easier to deport a word than it is to deport a person, easier to erase a label than to look into someone's eyes and say, I see you. And that's what makes this administration's language so effective and so dangerous. Because when we stop seeing people as people, anything becomes justifiable. Separation, detention, deportation, even death. It's all easier when you've convinced yourself that the ones suffering are somehow less than, and all of that begins with words. But I believe we can choose different words, words that reflect truth, words that reflect dignity, words that remind us that no human being is illegal. Their actions may break laws, yes, but their essence, their humanity, their right to be seen and heard and respected, that cannot and should not be criminalized. Instead of illegal, we can say undocumented. Instead of alien, we can say immigrant. Better yet, we can call them what they are: parents, workers, students, neighbors, human beings. That's the kind of language that restores humanity. That's the kind of language that builds bridges instead of walls. And I know some people will roll their eyes at this and say it's just words, but I've spent my life listening to people's stories. And I know that words are never just words. They're how we build belonging. They're how we start healing. They're how we decide who gets to matter. So today, as we talk about immigration, let us be mindful of what we say. Let us hold ourselves and our leaders accountable for the words they use. Because in every courtroom, in every detention center, in every home torn apart by these policies, those words are not abstract. They are life-altering. And let us remember, empathy begins when we stop labeling and start listening, when we replace fear with understanding, when we look beyond the politics and see the people. That's where the real America lives. Not in the slogans, not in the sound bites, but in the quiet, unwavering dignity of those who still believe in its promise, even as it turns them away. Here's a certain silence that falls over a home when someone is taken in the night. A silence so loud it drowns out everything else. The laughter that once filled the kitchen, footsteps on the stairs, the soft humming of a mother getting her children ready for school. It's a silence I've witnessed. It's a silence that speaks of pain, of confusion, of sudden loss. And it's a silence becoming more common across America today. Under this administration, families are being ripped apart, not by natural disasters or accidents, but by policy, by men and women in uniforms knocking on doors before the sun rises, asking for names, checking IDs, and walking out with someone's father, someone's mother, someone's everything. It happens quickly, without time to explain, without time to hug, sometimes without even time to wake the children. One moment you're making breakfast, and the next your life as you knew it is over. And what do we call that? What name do we give it when a country, in its pursuit of enforcement, forgets the heartbeats it's crushing beneath its boots? I call it a quiet tragedy, the kind that doesn't make headlines but breaks homes, the kind that doesn't make the evening news but leaves children staring at front doors that will never open again. I once sat with a little girl named Sophia. She was just 9 years old, with pigtails and big brown eyes. Her father had been picked up by immigration officers on his way to work. He didn't even get the chance to call home. For 3 days, they didn't know where he was. And when they finally found out, he was already on a plane back to a country he hadn't seen in 20 years. Sophia looked at me and asked, "Did he do something bad?" And in that moment, I didn't have an answer that could make sense to a child, because the truth is, he hadn't. He wasn't a criminal. He wasn't a threat. He was just undocumented. He was working, paying taxes, volunteering at his church, taking Sophia to ballet recitals on the weekends. But none of that mattered when the system came for him. It didn't ask about his character. It didn't ask about his family. It just saw a name, a status, and an expiration date. This is what mass deportation looks like. Not policy on paper, but heartbreak in real life. Children left behind with relatives, spouses forced to become single parents overnight, homes where laughter once lived, now echoing with uncertainty and grief, and it's happening at an alarming rate. The administration tells us it's about restoring order, about protecting borders. But I ask, at what cost? At what point does enforcement cross the line into cruelty? Because when we prioritize paperwork over people, we lose our way. We forget that behind every file is a face, a family, a future. I've met mothers who no longer go grocery shopping because they're afraid of being picked up in the parking lot. I've met teenage boys who've stopped going to school, afraid that any absence from home might be the last time they see their parents. This is not security, this is trauma. Widespread, generational, lasting trauma. And the children, they carry the deepest scar. They don't always understand why it happened. They just know someone they loved is suddenly gone. And let's be clear, this isn't just happening to new arrivals. This is happening to people who've built their lives here. People who've lived in the same neighborhood for decades, who own homes, who've never had so much as a parking ticket. But because they came without documentation, they live every day on borrowed time. And now that time is running out faster than ever. I remember standing in a courtroom watching a woman plead to stay in the country just a little longer. Long enough to attend her daughter's high school graduation. She wasn't asking for citizenship, just a few more weeks, a few more days. But the judge's answer was no. And the look in her eyes as she was escorted out of the room, I will never forget that. What we are doing is not humane. What we are doing is not just, and what we are losing in the process, the sense of community, the bonds of family, the basic belief in kindness, is something far more valuable than any policy goal. I believe in laws, but I also believe in grace. And I believe that when those two things collide, we must lean into our humanity. Because the true measure of a nation is not how it treats the powerful, but how it treats the powerless. And right now we are failing. Families are not just collateral damage, they are the foundation of everything. And when you break them, when you rip out the roots of people's lives, you don't just deport a person, you dismantle a dream that someone risked everything to build. So I ask this nation, is that who we are? Is that the America we want to leave behind? Because if we continue down this road, there may come a day when we don't recognize ourselves anymore. Not because the immigrants changed us, but because we changed in the way we treated them. Sometimes, if you listen closely enough, you can hear the machine humming behind it all. The wheels turning, the levers being pulled in offices far away from the faces they affect. What's happening in America right now? The deportations, the raids, the fear that has wrapped itself around immigrant communities like a second skin. This isn't random. This isn't just a reaction to a crisis. It's a carefully crafted political engine, and it's running fast. Let's be real. This administration knew exactly what it was doing when it tightened immigration enforcement, ramped up raids, and made sending them back a campaign promise with applause lines and sound bites. It was a message meant to stir emotion, but not empathy, to trigger fear, not understanding. We will deport them all. That was never just policy, it was strategy, a message carefully coded to energize one group of voters by vilifying another group of people. And the truth is, it worked. In some places it worked very well. People who were never directly impacted by immigration, who may have never met an undocumented person in their lives, suddenly felt empowered to speak in absolutes. They broke the law. They should go back. We need to take our country back. These slogans became currency in political discourse. Repeated so often, they started to sound like truth. But they are not truth. They are tactics, and those tactics come at a devastating human cost. I've been to cities where immigrant families live in constant anxiety, not because of crime or violence in their neighborhoods, but because of the political storm looming over their lives. You can feel it in the way people speak in hushed tones, in how parents avoid driving, even to take their kids to the doctor, in the whispered conversations at church after Sunday service. They're afraid of ICE vans. They're afraid of traffic stops. They're afraid of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, because they know the system doesn't see them as people. It sees them as numbers, as check marks on a list of deportation goals. And here's the most painful part. Many of the people being targeted by this machine are not criminals. They are not dangerous. They are not draining the system. They are doing the quiet, unseen work that keeps this country running. They are the ones who arrive before the sun rises to clean our offices, who serve food in restaurants most people never even wonder about, who care for our children and elderly, build our homes, tend to our crops. They're not standing on a stage making speeches. They're in the background keeping the American dream stitched together while being told they don't belong here. And yet the political narrative paints them as the problem, because in politics fear is easier to sell than fact. Fear makes headlines, fear motivates votes, and somewhere along the line the people in power decided that if they could make immigrants the villains, they could make themselves the heroes. We're protecting America, they say, but protecting it from what? From who? From the same people who are raising children, paying taxes, and trying every day to live with dignity. This is not about justice. This is not about safety. This is about power, and it's about how that power is being used, not to unite but to divide, not to solve problems but to exploit them. It's about politics that thrives, not on compassion, but on cruelty packaged as righteousness. Because if they can convince enough people that undocumented immigrants are the enemy, they never have to address the deeper truths, like why our immigration system is so broken, or why there's been so little progress in creating pathways to citizenship, or why we've allowed this issue to be weaponized again and again across multiple administrations. What's happening isn't just a political decision, it's a moral failing. A moral failure we all have to witness and answer to. I spoke with a pastor in Arizona who told me his congregation has shrunk because so many families have fled the state in fear. They didn't commit crimes, they just no longer felt safe, not from criminals but from their own government. They left behind jobs, homes, lives, and all for what? To fulfill a political quota, to look tough on the evening news, to make a base cheer at a rally. We need to ask ourselves as a nation, what kind of leadership do we want? Leadership that listens to fear and gives it a microphone, or leadership that sees people as people and understands that safety, yes, is essential but never at the cost of soul? Because what's being lost in this strategy, this machine built on exclusion, is not just trust in our institutions, it's trust in each other. It's the quiet belief that America, flawed as it is, still tries to do the right thing. But every time a hard-working parent is deported without cause, every time a child is left sobbing in a school office because no one came to pick them up, that belief weakens, that light dims. This is not a war on crime, it's a war on dignity. It's a war on the idea that anyone, regardless of where they came from, deserves a chance. And the longer we let this political machine run unchecked, the more we lose not just them but ourselves. I want you to think about the hands that made your morning coffee, the hands that cleaned the hospital room where your loved one recovered, the hands that fixed your roof after a storm, the hands that picked the fruit on your table. Those hands, brown, worn, strong, they belong to people who are often invisible in the American story. And right now those very people are being told, in no uncertain terms, you're not welcome here. There is a painful contradiction in the way America has treated undocumented immigrants. We welcome their labor but not their lives. We accept their work but not their presence. And under this administration that contradiction has grown into something cruel. Because while they continue to serve, to clean, to cook, to build, they are being hunted, rounded up, deported, as if the value of their work is somehow separate from the value of their humanity. But I need to say this as clearly as I can. These are not criminals. These are not threats. These are contributors. These are caretakers. These are community members. These are people who have sacrificed everything just to give their families a little more, a little safety, a little hope. And for years, sometimes decades, they have done the quiet, unseen work that keeps America's heart beating. But now they live in the shadows of fear. I remember meeting a man named Hector in a small town outside of Fresno, California. He had been in the United States for 17 years. He had 3 children, all American citizens, and a small landscaping business that employed 6 other people. Hector never took a day off, never missed a tax payment, never asked for anything but a chance. And yet one morning, as he left for work, ICE agents surrounded his truck. They didn't ask about his kids. They didn't ask about his employees. They didn't ask about his record. They just took him. That business is now closed. Those jobs are gone. Those children, they cry themselves to sleep most nights, asking when their papa is coming back. And that's the story no one wants to tell. That's the part that's been erased from the political conversation. We talk about enforcement, we talk about border security, but we don't talk about the economic, emotional, spiritual cost of removing people like heck. The truth is, undocumented immigrants are not taking from America. They are giving to it every single day. They are in the fields, in the kitchens, in the factories, in the hospital. They're the reason your produce is affordable. Your restaurant meal is served with care. Your elderly neighbor has someone to help her bathe and eat. And yet, while their work is cherished, their identities are criminalized. That is the wound we are living with. That is the hypocrisy we are upholding. We want the fruit but not the farmer. We want the clean floors but not the janitor. We want the strong, silent hands, but only if they stay silent. And now, under this administration, the silence is being shattered by fear. People are disappearing from their jobs, their homes, their children's lives, and no one in power seems to be asking what happens to the communities they leave behind. No one seems to care about the ripple effect, the empty chairs at the dinner table, the children left without role models, the small businesses shuttered because the owner was deported. We cannot afford to pretend that this is just an immigration issue. This is a human issue. This is a national soul issue. When you remove the people who are working the hardest, who are holding up industries most Americans don't want to touch, you are not fixing a problem. You are breaking a system that already relied on their silent, unseen strength. And let's not forget, most undocumented immigrants do pay taxes, billions of dollars each year. They contribute to Social Security they may never benefit from. They fund schools their children may never feel safe in. They invest in communities that may one day turn their backs on them. And still, they stay. Still, they hope. That is what humbles me. That in the face of such hostility, such disregard, such uncertainty, they stay. They keep showing up. They keep giving. They keep believing that someday, this country will see them not as outsiders, but as part of the American fabric. Because they are. So when I hear political leaders talk about mass deportation, as if it's just a matter of numbers, just files in a drawer, I think of Hector, I think of his children, I think of the woman who cleaned a hospital bed just minutes before my friend lay there recovering from surgery. I think of the teacher's aide who stays after school to help kids with their English homework, even though she herself still struggles with the language. I think of all the people whose names we'll never know, whose hands we may never see, but whose presence makes life better for us all. There comes a moment in the life of every person, every family, and every nation, when you have to stop and ask yourself, who are we becoming? Not who we say we are, not who we pretend to be, but who we really are, in our actions, in our choices, in the way we treat those with the least power. That moment, my friends, is upon. And when I look at what is happening in this country, at how we are treating undocumented immigrants, not just through words but through policies and raids and silence, I am deeply, profoundly concerned about who we are becoming, because this is not just about politics anymore. This is about identity, about the soul of a nation. It's about whether we will continue to be a country defined by compassion and opportunity, or one consumed by fear and exclusion. Because right now, with every deportation that sends a mother away from her child, with every raid that turns a workplace into a war zone, with every child left in tears on the front steps of a school because their parent never showed up, we are making a choice, and that choice is being etched into the heart of history. When we look back at this era, what will we see? Will we see a nation that rose to meet the moment with courage and empathy? Or will we see a country that hardened its heart, that closed its borders, not just to people but to its own principles? I believe in accountability. I believe in laws, but laws without love are lifeless. They become instruments of cruelty rather than justice. And the way this administration is enforcing immigration policy, so broad, so ruthless, so detached from basic decency, tells me that love has left the room. It tells me that we are not being led by wisdom or compassion,
but by calculation and coldness. And when leadership becomes about fear, not vision, the whole nation suffers. I met a high school senior named Maribel, born in Mexico, brought to the US when she was just 3 months old. She had no memory of the place she was born. All she knew was Chicago. Her school, her friends, her language. Everything was American. She made the honor roll every semester. She volunteered at a local nursing home. She was preparing for college. And then one day, she came home to find that her mother had been taken. No warning, no time to say goodbye, just an empty chair at the dinner table. And suddenly everything shifted for Maribel. The future she had worked so hard for became a question mark. She was alone, scared, lost in a country that told her she didn't belong, even though it was the only home she'd ever known. That's not just one story. That's thousands, tens of thousands, and each one is a mirror we should be looking into. What do we see when we look at ourselves through their eyes? Do we see kindness? Do we see strength? Or do we see a country that says, you are valuable only if you came here the right way? A country that offers opportunity with one hand and takes it away with the other. I think of the Statue of Liberty, standing tall in New York Harbor, holding her torch high. On her base, the words are carved. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. Those words were not written with an asterisk. They didn't say only if you have papers. They didn't say only if you came the right way. They said breathe, and breathing freely means living without fear. It means belonging. But today, for millions of people, that promise has been broken. And what's even more painful is that their dreams were never unreasonable. They didn't ask for special treatment. They asked for a chance, a shot at dignity, a seat at the table. And now they're being told that no matter how hard they work, how long they've stayed, how much they've contributed, it's not enough, that they'll never be enough. That's not the America I was raised to believe in. I believe we are better than that. I believe we can write a new chapter, one that honors both law and love, one that protects the integrity of our borders, without turning our backs on the humanity of our neighbor, one that remembers that every great nation is measured not by how it treats the powerful, but by how it treats the powerless. Because make no mistake, the world is watching, our children are watching, and they will inherit whatever we build. If we build walls, they will live behind them. If we build compassion, they will walk freely in a world that believes in the value of every soul. So the question is simple, but profound. What kind of nation are we becoming? And even more importantly, what kind of nation do we want to be? Because if we continue on this path, one day we may find that we've not just deported people, we've deported our principles, we've exiled empathy, we've silenced the stories that made this country more than just land and law, but home.